Okay, picking up with economic reforms. So, remember that, of course, we know that France was in major, major debt, and this is one of the reasons why the revolution breaks out, is because they just aren't managing their debt adequately. They don't tax a very wealthy portion of the population, and so many of the taxes fall upon the third estate. Most of the country's debt is actually owed to the bourgeois class. So this kind of shows another source of tension here, that the bourgeois are the people who are wealthier, but they're still in the third estate, so they're still paying taxes. But yet they're also lending the government a whole bunch of money. So, you'd think that maybe they might want some tax exemptions as well, since they're throwing such a huge bone to the government. Um, so the reforms that the revolutionary government makes. Now, first off, there was no uniform system of weights and measures, and so the revolutionary government adopts the metric system for France. All right, so basically, this is going to make everything more uniform, a lot easier, basically easier to regulate the economy. Obviously, the metric system catches on, and aren't we one of the only countries that doesn't use it now? I think so. So the metric system is definitely a significant kind of, I guess it's a way to help improve the economy, but also to help improve trade as well. Just easier to measure and weigh things. Um, they also pass what's called Le Chapelier law. What this does is it outlaws strikes, it outlaws worker coalitions to form and assemblies to form. All right, so you might say, okay, well, who cares about that? Why does that matter? This shows us how much the Legislative Assembly is controlled by the more wealthy members of the Third Estate. Because think about it, if you can't strike or you can't form a coalition or any kind of assembly as a worker, then you run the risk of being exploited by whoever is employing you. So doesn't this sound like this law is benefiting the bourgeoisie and not the kind of urban poor or the peasants? These are the people that actually might benefit from something like striking or assembling together as workers. So basically, this shows us La Chapelier law shows us again that the bourgeoisie is still very much in control of the government at this point. All right. Another thing that this law does is it abolishes monopolies and also abolishes guilds, because guilds could be very monopolistic. And it also uh, it wants, basically, this new government wants all men to freely enter all trades. So it's kind of encouraging capitalism and getting rid of government uh, interference with the economy. Also, the revolutionary government is going to abolish internal tariffs, which again is going to open up trade networks. And they issue France's first paper currency. These are called assignats. You can see one down here. And so what an assignat was it was a form of paper currency that was backed up by the church property that the revolutionary government was seizing after the civil constitution of the clergy. Okay, so realize that, paper currency is all well and good, but it has to actually be backed up in something. Like a $20 bill is just a piece of paper if you think about it. So there's something much more concrete and tangible that is backing up that currency that makes it worth what it is. Okay, so for the assignat, its worth was determined by the value of the church property that was confiscated. Right, what you're going to see though later on down the line is that the assignats are going to cause problems for the economy, because their value is going to start to exceed that of the confiscated property. So basically, this is going to lead to some massive inflation, or we could even call it hyperinflation. This starts as early as 1792. Just noticed I wrote 1891. My apologies. It's 1791 for the La Chapelier law. And okay, here we go. Um, so yeah, the churches are selling off a lot of land to pay off the national debt. And a lot of this land is purchased by peasants. So we can see that this might show a little bit more of a flip in power, that the peasants are actually able to purchase some land when this new revolutionary government is making economic reforms. Okay, next we're gonna see the king is going to try to escape. Louis the 16th is not really enjoying the fact that he's living in Paris under the scrutiny of all these people that are so frustrated with his government that they stormed the Bastille, that they killed people in the process, that a bunch of women marched to Versailles and made the king and queen move to Paris. Basically, Louis decides to flee. He first writes a written message that repudiates the revolution, and then he he tries to leave to the Varennes region. And what he wants to do is join the émigrés. Remember the people that leave France altogether. Um, and he also wants to seek out help against the revolutionary government by foreign powers, right? So maybe countries like Austria, countries that are looking at the French Revolution as too dramatic, too radical. He might, if he leaves the country, get some support. But he is caught, and they bring him back to Paris, and he is forced to accept a position as a constitutional monarch. Okay, so again, we're not at the more radical stage of the revolution. We'll get to that uh, in a future discussion. But we see that obviously the king is in a much more subordinate position. That even when he attempts to flee, he gets caught and brought back. Um, but this shows us that obviously the king's attitude is very much against the revolutionary government. And so, even though he's technically still there as a constitutional monarch, we see that, because of the king's attitude, he's kind of leaving the country to be governed by the legislative assembly, which is under a lot of debate about what to do next. There are some people that are more radical and say, let's get rid of the monarch altogether. And there are some people that are a little bit more conservative and want a constitutional monarchy to remain in place. So by the king, basically, I mean, if he attempts to flee, this shows us that he doesn't really want to be king anymore. All right, so I mean, at this point, we kind of see that um, the king is no longer going to be in control. Instead, it's going to be this organization, the Legislative Assembly, that's arguing about a lot of things. So a heated debate is key. Also, a lot of them, after the flight to Varennes, feel that the king is a traitor. Last thing we should be aware of for this part of the reading is the role of women in the French Revolution. We already talked about the Women's March to Versailles, but also realize that there are other women who are attempting to kind of establish more authority in this time when this new government is kind of spelling out the basic rights of its citizens. All right, so one of the problems, I guess, with the Declaration of, or at least a problem for women with the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, is that it was just the Declaration of the Rights of Man. It didn't say anything about women's rights, all right? Just like the Declaration of Independence said all men are created equal. The United States has a response to that eventually. It's the Declaration of Sentiments in 1848. All right, basically some women's rights activists actually kind of rewrite the Declaration of Independence, but they include the word women in it. Um, so realize that women gained some rights during the revolution. They get increased rights to divorce. They also have the right to inherit property. And they can get some child support from fathers of their illegitimate children. So that's obviously kind of a step in the right direction. But there's some things that they still cannot do. All right, women can't vote. Okay, they can't hold any type of office. And they can't be educated, at least not nearly as formally as their male counterparts are. And what's interesting about this is that even with the Enlightenment kind of inspiring the French Revolution, it already inspired the American Revolution, the Enlightenment didn't really extend to women. Okay, most Enlightenment thinkers still didn't think there should be gender equality. So we're actually going to see, like, for example, many women in the French Revolution are advocating increased access to education. Even Rousseau himself says that that education should be promoted for boys, not for women. So we kind of see that that these women, in a way, are actually even more revolutionary than the Enlightenment thinkers. Okay, so two important women that we should be familiar with. One is French and one is actually English. Olympe de Gouges is French. Okay, she writes a work called The Rights of Woman. We see, okay, that's kind of a female version of the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Okay, it's written in 1791. And what she does is she takes all the articles of the Declaration of Rights of Man, there were 17 of them, and she rewrites them and applies them to women explicitly in each case. Okay, so basically, women cannot have their property confiscated without compensation, right? Women have the right to a free press, freedom of religion, and so on. Just to make sure that these revolutionary accomplishments are not just for men. Okay, she also asserts some things that were actually accomplished by the revolution. She asserts the right of women to divorce under certain conditions, to control property in marriage, and also have equal access to higher education. The equal rights to higher education is not something that is accomplished during the revolution, but she still attests that that's something that women should get. Now, Olympe de Gouges is actually executed later on in the revolution, so you can kind of see how accepting the revolutionary government was of her ideas. Not very, right? Another important woman who kind of responds to the French Revolution is Mary Wollstonecraft. Just by the way, this is Olympe de Gouges here. This is Mary Wollstonecraft here. Mary Wollstonecraft in England published A Vindication of the Rights of Woman in 1792. And so, like de Gouges, she actually has a lot of similar ideas to Gouges. She advocates education for women, right? She doesn't feel like what just the Enlightenment thinkers said, that it should just be extended to boys. She thinks it should go farther. She also is replying to some conservative reactions to the revolution, which we're going to talk about next time. In particular, a man named Edmund Burke in England feels that the revolution was very radical and violent, and he kind of writes a response, a conservative response to the revolution. And it was called Reflections of the Revolution in France. We're going to talk about that next time. And Mary Wollstonecraft is kind of replying to that. All right, so, some other people in England who were looking at the revolution as too violent, Mary Wollstonecraft is encouraging revolutionary ideals and she wants them to extend to women. So, we will pick up next time by talking about the next phases of the revolution. We're going to see France start to go to war with some other countries. So I will pick up with you next time.